She left the billionaire CEO on Christmas Eve. 8 years later, his hidden twins called him behind her back. Hello, I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, sacrifice, and second chances. Nathaniel Brooks, he answered, his voice clipped and professional as he picked up the call from an unknown number. There was silence on the other end, then a small, uncertain voice. Hello? Are you our dad? Nathaniel froze, his hand tightening around the phone. Who is this? He asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. I'm Chloe, the small voice replied. And my brother Tyler is here too. We're twins. We're 7. Our mom is Rachel Thompson. Another voice, Tyler's, added quickly. She left you on Christmas Eve a long time ago. The world seemed to tilt beneath Nathaniel. Twins? 7 years old? Rachel had been pregnant when she left him? His mind raced, calculating dates, processing implications, struggling to maintain the control that defined his existence. Have you ever wondered what it would take for someone to walk away from a life of luxury and privilege? To choose freedom over wealth? To protect their children from the very person who helped create them? And what happens when those carefully guarded secrets finally come to light? If you've ever had to choose between comfort and dignity, between wealth and worth, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe some things are more valuable than money, and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that will touch your heart and challenge your mind. Hi, my beautiful sisters. This story is for every woman who has ever felt diminished in a relationship, who has sacrificed her voice for peace, who has wondered if walking away means giving up. Your worth isn't measured by the luxury surrounding you or the status of the person beside you. It's found in your courage to choose yourself, to protect your peace, to create boundaries that honor your spirit. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what everyone else sees as perfect, because you know the truth behind closed doors. Remember, you deserve a love that feels like freedom, not one that feels like a beautifully decorated cage. Your intuition is your superpower, trust it. The snow fell in thick, silent flakes outside the windows of Brooks Tower, transforming the city into a glittering wonderland that matched the extravagant Christmas decorations adorning the penthouse suite. Rachel Thompson stood motionless by the floor-to-ceiling glass, her reflection ghostly against the darkening skyline. The packed suitcase at her feet a stark contrast to the festive opulence surrounding her. 3 years ago, she had entered this space wide-eyed and hopeful, a talented marketing strategist whose innovative campaigns had caught the attention of Nathaniel Brooks, founder and CEO of Brooks Enterprises. Their whirlwind romance had culminated in moving in together within months, a union that business magazines had celebrated as the perfect merger of creativity and execution. What those glossy features hadn't captured was how quickly admiration could curdle into control, how praise could transform into possession. You're really going through with this? Nathaniel's voice cut through her thoughts, deep and measured as always, betraying nothing of the fury she knew simmered beneath his composed exterior. He stood in the doorway, tumbler of whiskey in hand, the perfect picture of casual elegance in his tailored loungewear. Yes, Rachel answered simply, turning to face the man who had once represented everything she'd ever wanted. At 42, Nathaniel Brooks remained devastatingly handsome. Dark hair threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, piercing dark eyes that had once made her feel like the center of the universe, now coldly calculating as they assessed her. On Christmas Eve, he took a deliberate sip of his drink. How dramatically appropriate. The timing isn't intentional, she replied, though they both knew it was symbolic in its way. The end of a chapter before a new year could begin. I've made my decision, Nathaniel. A decision. He repeated the phrase with a bitter smile, as if this is some minor choice, not you walking away from everything we've built. Everything you've built, Rachel corrected quietly. That's the problem. There was never a we in your vision. Just you, making every decision, planning every moment of our lives without ever asking what I wanted. Nathaniel's expression hardened. I've given you everything. The luxury, the lifestyle, opportunities most people only dream about. Everything except a voice, Rachel said, reaching for her suitcase. Everything except respect. The weight of her words hung in the air between them, heavy with the accumulated disappointments of their relationship. Rachel remembered the early days, when Nathaniel's confidence had seemed like strength, his decisiveness like protection. How gradually those same qualities had transformed into something suffocating. As he scheduled her days, chose her clothes, selected her friends, all under the guise of knowing what was best. "You're being ridiculous," Nathaniel said, setting his glass down with controlled precision. "Name one thing you've asked for that I haven't provided." "The freedom to choose for myself," Rachel replied without hesitation. "The right to have opinions that differ from yours without being dismissed as emotional or irrational. The simple dignity of being treated as a partner rather than a possession." Nathaniel didn't move from the doorway, his imposing frame blocking her exit. For a moment, Rachel felt a flicker of the old fear, that he would refuse to let her go, that his need for control would once again override everything else. "You know what your problem is, Rachel?" he said, his voice dangerously soft. "You've never appreciated what you have. Do you have any idea how many women would kill to be in your position?" "Then find one of them," Rachel replied, surprising herself with her steadiness. "Someone who measures her worth by the price tag of her clothes or the exclusivity of her address." "That was never me, Nathaniel. You just never bothered to notice." She remembered the moment she'd realized she needed to leave, 3 weeks earlier, at the charity gala where Nathaniel had interrupted her mid-sentence while she was speaking to the head of a nonprofit, placing his hand on the small of her back and saying, "What my Rachel means to say is," as if she were a child incapable of expressing her own thoughts. The humiliation had burned, but more painful was the realization that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was the pattern of their entire relationship. Instead of arguing further, Nathaniel stepped aside, his voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "You'll be back. When you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect the same terms." Rachel paused beside him, close enough to catch the familiar scent of his cologne. "That's exactly why I'm leaving," she said, the words both a declaration and a realization. "Because to you, everything, even love, is a business transaction." As the elevator doors closed on her former life, Rachel exhaled a breath she felt she'd been holding for 3 years. The tears would come later, for what might have been, for the dreams that had withered under the weight of Nathaniel's expectations. But in that moment, watching the floor numbers descend toward the lobby, all she felt was an overwhelming sense of liberation. What she couldn't know, as the taxi pulled away from the gleaming Brooks Tower into the snowy night, was that she carried with her more than just the remnants of a failed relationship. Inside her, defying the odds, twin lives had just begun to form. A secret her body would reveal to her only weeks later, long after she had disappeared from Nathaniel Brooks's carefully controlled world. If you've ever had to make the difficult choice to walk away from a relationship that looked perfect from the outside but was crumbling from within, hit that like button. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose our own well-being over comfort and security. And if you want to see how Rachel's journey unfolds, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. 6 weeks after leaving Brooks Tower, Rachel sat on the edge of her bathtub in her small apartment, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Undeniable. She took a shaky breath, her mind racing with implications. "This can't be happening," she whispered to the empty bathroom. But it was happening. Despite their precautions, despite the odds, she was carrying Nathaniel Brooks's child. Her first instinct was to call him. Whatever their personal differences, he had a right to know, didn't he? She even went so far as to pick up her phone, his number still memorized despite having deleted his contact. But then she remembered his final words to her. "You'll be back. When you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect the same terms." Rachel placed her hand protectively over her still flat stomach. Would Nathaniel see this child as a blessing or as leverage? Would he use this pregnancy to reassert the control she had fought so hard to escape? Would a child raised in Nathaniel's world learn to value power over compassion, success over happiness? "I can't go back," she decided, speaking the words aloud to make them real. I won't. The doctor's appointment a week later brought another shock. Not one heartbeat on the ultrasound, but two. Twins. The technician had smiled at Rachel's stunned expression. Congratulations, she'd said warmly. Double the blessing. Double the responsibility, Rachel thought. Double the reason to build a life where her children could grow up free from the suffocating expectations that had nearly broken her. That night, she made a decision that would shape the next 8 years of her life. She would raise these children on her own, away from Nathaniel's influence. She would move to a new city, build a new career, create a home where her children would be valued for who they were, not what they could become. It wasn't about denying Nathaniel his rights as a father. It was about protecting two innocent lives from becoming pawns in his need for control. The following morning, she applied for a position at a small marketing agency in Mapleton, a quiet suburb 3,000 miles from Brooks Tower. 2 weeks later, she packed her meager belongings into her car and drove away from the city where she had once believed her dreams would come true, toward an uncertain future that was entirely her own to shape. 8 years passed like a dream and a lifetime simultaneously. Rachel Thompson stood in the bright kitchen of her modest suburban home, watching her 7-year-old twins argue over whose turn it was to feed their golden retriever. Max, Chloe, and Tyler, mirror images with their father's striking dark eyes and her own honey blonde hair, were the unexpected miracle that had transformed her carefully planned escape into something far more complicated. "Mom!" Tyler called, his voice carrying the slight lisp from his recently lost front tooth. "Chloe's hogging the iPad again." "Am not," Chloe protested. "It's my turn. You had it all morning." Rachel sighed, setting down her coffee mug. "Chloe, you know the rules. 30 minutes each, then switch." As she mediated the latest sibling dispute, Rachel felt the familiar pang of guilt that occasionally surfaced. Nathaniel remained unaware of his children's existence, a decision she had justified to herself countless times over the years. He had never wanted children for their own sake, only as extensions of his legacy, pieces to be positioned in his corporate chess game. The twins deserved better than to be molded into miniature versions of their father's ambition. Yet as they grew, she saw flashes of him in them daily. Tyler's strategic mind and natural leadership, Chloe's intense focus when solving problems. Sometimes, catching these glimpses of Nathaniel in their mannerisms, Rachel wondered if her decision had been truly fair to any of them. Her career at the marketing agency had flourished beyond her expectations. Starting as a mid-level strategist, she had quickly proven her value, bringing in new clients with her innovative campaigns and rising to partner within 5 years. Her colleagues respected her creativity and work ethic, never suspecting that the quiet determination that drove her success had been forged in the crucible of her relationship with one of the business world's most formidable figures. "Mom, can we go to the park after lunch?" Chloe asked, the iPad dispute already forgotten. "I want to practice my soccer moves before the game on Saturday. And I want to collect more leaves for my science project," Tyler added, his dark eyes, so like his father's, bright with enthusiasm. Rachel smiled, grateful for their resilience, their ability to move past conflicts with the easy forgiveness of childhood. "Sure, we can go for an hour or so, but homework comes first when we get back." As the twins raced upstairs to change, Rachel's phone buzzed with a news alert. She had long ago stopped actively searching for information about Nathaniel, but she still maintained alerts for major news about Brooks Enterprises, a precaution she told herself was prudent, given that the company's fortunes were tied to the man who had fathered her children. Brooks Enterprises announces major expansion into European markets. The headline read. Below it was a photo of Nathaniel at a press conference, looking much as he had when she left him. Confident, commanding, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage payment. The only difference was a slightly more pronounced touch of silver at his temples, a few more lines around his eyes. Success had aged him well. Rachel closed the alert quickly, pushing away the complicated emotions that always surfaced when she saw his image. Regret wasn't among them. She had never doubted her decision to leave. But there was something else, a wistfulness perhaps, for the man she had once believed him to be, before his true nature revealed itself. "Mom!" Chloe asked later that evening as Rachel tucked her into bed. Why don't we have a dad like Jamie and Sophia do? The question, though not new, still caught Rachel off guard. You have a dad, she answered carefully. He just doesn't live with us. But why doesn't he visit? Tyler asked from the doorway of his adjoining room. Doesn't he want to know us? Rachel's heart clenched. These questions had been coming more frequently lately, as the twins became more aware of the different family structures around them. She had always tried to be honest with them, but how do you explain to 7-year-olds that their father doesn't know they exist because you chose not to tell him? It's complicated, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that aren't about the people they leave behind. But we didn't do anything wrong, Chloe persisted, her dark eyes, so like Nathaniel's, wide and questioning. Of course you didn't, Rachel assured her, smoothing back her daughter's blonde hair. This isn't about anything you did or didn't do. What's his name? Tyler asked, his voice small but determined. You never even tell us his name. Rachel hesitated. She had always been vague about Nathaniel, referring to him simply as your father on the rare occasions she mentioned him at all. Giving them his name felt like opening a door she had kept firmly closed for 8 years. His name is Nathaniel Brooks, she finally said. He runs a big company called Brooks Enterprises. Is he on the internet? Chloe asked immediately, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. That's enough questions for tonight, Rachel said firmly, kissing each child on the forehead. Sleep tight, my loves. Later, alone in her kitchen with a glass of wine, Rachel scrolled through her phone to an old contact she had never deleted. Nathaniel Brooks. She had changed her number years ago, ensuring he couldn't reach her, but had kept his contact information. For what purpose? She wasn't entirely sure. Perhaps as a reminder of what she had escaped, or perhaps because some small part of her had never fully let go. The twins' questions had grown more frequent and more specific lately. How long could she continue deflecting them? At what point does protection become deception? These questions haunted her as she finally went to bed, unaware that her curious children had their own plans for finding answers. If you're a parent who's had to make difficult decisions to protect your children, even when those decisions came with their own complications, let me know in the comments below. The choices we make from love are often the hardest ones to explain, even to ourselves. The following day was Christmas Eve, 8 years to the day since Rachel had walked out of Brooks Tower. The morning had been filled with holiday preparations, baking cookies, wrapping the last few presents, and setting up for their traditional Christmas Eve movie marathon. The twins seemed unusually quiet, exchanging whispers and meaningful glances that Rachel attributed to excitement about the holiday. I'm going to run to the store for more hot chocolate, Rachel announced, grabbing her purse. You two behave while I'm gone. I'll only be 15 minutes. As soon as they heard her car pull out of the driveway, Chloe and Tyler sprang into action. Quick, get Mom's phone, Chloe instructed, her expression serious beyond her 7 years. It should be in her bedroom. Tyler hesitated. Are we sure about this? Mom's going to be really mad. Don't you want to know about him? Chloe challenged. Don't you want to know why he never tried to find us? Mom won't tell us anything real. After a moment's consideration, Tyler nodded and darted to Rachel's room, returning moments later with her smartphone. It's locked, he said, his face falling. Try her birthday, Chloe suggested. She always uses that. To their surprise, the phone unlocked immediately. They quickly navigated to her contacts, scrolling until they found the name they were looking for. Nathaniel Brooks. There he is, Chloe whispered, pointing to the contact. That has to be him. Tyler nodded, his expression serious beyond his 7 years. Should we really do this? Mom might get really mad. Chloe's jaw set in determination. The same expression Nathaniel wore when facing down corporate rivals, though she couldn't know this. Don't you want to know? Don't you want to hear his voice at least once? After a moment's hesitation, Tyler nodded. With trembling fingers, Chloe pressed the call button and put the phone on speaker. 3,000 miles away, Nathaniel Brooks was reviewing acquisition proposals in his office. Christmas Eve was just another workday for him, He had long ago stopped celebrating holidays that only served to remind him of what he had lost. His executive assistant had left hours ago, leaving him alone in the vast expanse of the Brooks Enterprises executive floor. When his phone rang with an unfamiliar number, his first instinct was to ignore it. But something, intuition or perhaps simple Christmas Eve melancholy, made him answer rather than letting it go to voicemail. "Nathaniel Brooks," he answered, his voice clipped and professional. There was silence on the other end, then a small, uncertain voice. "Hello? Are you our dad?" Nathaniel froze, his hand tightening around the phone. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. "I'm Chloe," the small voice replied. "And my brother Tyler is here too. We're twins. We're 7. Our mom is Rachel Thompson." Another voice, Tyler's, added quickly. "She left you on Christmas Eve a long time ago." The world seemed to tilt beneath Nathaniel. Twins? 7 years old? Rachel had been pregnant when she left him? His mind raced, calculating dates, processing implications, struggling to maintain the control that defined his existence. "Are you still there?" Chloe asked, her confidence wavering. "Yes," Nathaniel managed, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "I'm here. Does your mother know you're calling me?" A telling pause. "Not exactly," Tyler admitted. "But we wanted to know about you. Mom doesn't tell us much. Just that you're a businessman who wasn't ready for a family," Chloe added. "But we thought maybe you'd be ready now." The simple hope in their voices cut through Nathaniel's carefully constructed defenses. For the first time in his meticulously controlled life, Nathaniel Brooks was completely unprepared. "I didn't know about you," he said finally, the truth of it settling like a weight on his chest. "Your mother never told me she was pregnant." "She didn't." Chloe sounded genuinely shocked. "But why wouldn't she tell you about us?" Nathaniel closed his eyes, memories of his last conversation with Rachel flooding back. His arrogance, his dismissiveness, his absolute certainty that she would return on his terms. I think I might have given her reason not to." "Are you mad at us?" Tyler asked quietly. "No," Nathaniel replied immediately. "Not at all. I'm just surprised. And I'd very much like to meet you both." In the background, he heard a car pulling into a driveway, then Rachel's voice calling the children. Panic edged into Chloe's voice. "We have to go. Mom's back." "Wait," Nathaniel said quickly. "Where do you live?" "How can I?" "We're in Mapleton," Tyler blurted out before Chloe could stop him. "On Willow Street." "Tyler," Chloe hissed, but it was too late. "Chloe." "Tyler." "I'm home." Rachel's voice came closer. "We have to go," Chloe whispered urgently. "Bye, Dad." The line went dead, leaving Nathaniel alone with a truth that rewrote his entire understanding of the past 8 years. He sat motionless for several minutes, the acquisition proposals forgotten as his mind processed what he had just learned. Then, with the decisive action that had built his empire, he reached for his phone again. "James," he said to his assistant, "cancel my meetings for the next week, and book me on the next flight to Mapleton." In a modest home on Willow Street, Rachel called her children to the living room, unaware that her carefully constructed world had just begun to unravel. As Chloe and Tyler exchanged meaningful glances while helping her unpack the groceries, Nathaniel Brooks was already making plans to meet the children he never knew existed, and to confront the woman who had kept them from him for 8 long years. If you've ever had a secret that you kept to protect someone you love, only to wonder if that secret might eventually cause more harm than good, hit that like button. Sometimes our most well-intentioned decisions can lead to unexpected consequences. And if you want to see what happens when Nathaniel confronts Rachel after 8 years of separation, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The next morning, Christmas Day, dawned bright and clear in Mapleton. Rachel was awakened by the twins bouncing on her bed, their excitement about presents momentarily overshadowing their secret from the previous day. "Mom, wake up. It's Christmas," Chloe exclaimed, her blonde hair still tousled from sleep. "Santa came," Tyler added, tugging at Rachel's hand. "Come see." Rachel laughed, allowing herself to be pulled from bed. All right, I'm coming. Let me grab my robe." The living room was a scene of festive chaos. Colorful wrapping paper soon littered the floor as the twins tore into their gifts with unbridled enthusiasm. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor beside them, coffee mug in hand, savoring their joy. These moments, simple, genuine, filled with love, were why she had made the choices she had. No amount of luxury could compare to the authentic happiness reflected in her children's faces. "This is the best Christmas ever," Tyler declared, hugging the telescope he'd been hoping for. "It really is," Rachel agreed, unaware that 3,000 miles away, Nathaniel Brooks was boarding his private jet, his destination set for the small town she had chosen as their sanctuary. The doorbell rang just after noon, as Rachel was preparing their Christmas lunch. Assuming it was one of the neighbors dropping off holiday cookies, she wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to answer, the twins trailing curiously behind her. When she opened the door, time seemed to stop. Standing on her porch, looking both commanding and uncertain, was Nathaniel Brooks. 8 years had added a few more lines to his face, a touch more silver to his hair, but his presence was as overwhelming as ever, tall, impeccably dressed even in casual attire, those piercing dark eyes fixed intently on her face. "Hello, Rachel," he said quietly. Rachel instinctively moved to block the doorway, as if she could physically prevent the past from colliding with her present. "Nathaniel," she managed, her voice barely audible. "What are you doing here?" Before he could answer, Chloe pushed forward, her eyes wide with recognition and excitement. "Are you our dad? You look just like in the pictures online." Rachel's head whipped around to stare at her daughter, then back to Nathaniel, her mind racing to understand how this was happening. "Chloe, Tyler, go to your rooms. Now." "But Mom," Tyler began to protest. "Now," Rachel repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. As the twins reluctantly retreated, casting curious glances over their shoulders, Rachel stepped onto the porch, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. "How did you find us?" she demanded, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Our children called me yesterday," Nathaniel replied, his use of "our" deliberate and pointed. "Children I didn't know existed until 24 hours ago." Rachel closed her eyes briefly, the pieces falling into place. "They used my phone while I was at the store," she realized aloud. "Nathaniel, I can explain." "Explain what, exactly?" His voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger simmering beneath. "That you've kept my children from me for 8 years? That you made a unilateral decision that I didn't deserve to know I had a son and daughter." "You didn't want children," Rachel countered, finding her footing in the face of his accusation. "You wanted heirs, extensions of yourself, not individuals with their own minds and hearts. You never gave me the chance to be anything else," he said, his voice dropping. "You made assumptions about what kind of father I would be, then acted on those assumptions without ever allowing me to prove you wrong or right." Rachel felt the weight of his words, the uncomfortable truth in them. She had made that decision, justified it to herself 1,000 times over the years, but standing face to face with Nathaniel now, she couldn't deny that she had taken a choice from him that wasn't solely hers to make. "We should talk," she conceded finally. "But not here, not with the twins listening. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks down that's open today. Meet me there in 30 minutes. Nathaniel nodded, his expression unreadable. 30 minutes. After arranging for her neighbor to watch the twins, with strict instructions that they were to stay inside, Rachel walked to the coffee shop, her mind racing with explanations, justifications, and the growing realization that the carefully constructed life she had built was about to change irrevocably. Nathaniel was already seated at a corner table when she arrived, 2 steaming cups in front of him. "I remembered how you take your coffee," he said as she sat down. "Some things you don't forget." Rachel accepted the cup, noting that he had indeed remembered. 1 sugar, splash of cream. It was a small detail that somehow made this surreal situation even more disorienting. "How did you find us so quickly?" she asked, needing to understand the practical details before diving into the emotional abyss that awaited. "Tyler mentioned Willow Street," There are only 3 Willow Streets in towns called Mapleton in the entire country. Your marketing agency's website has your photo on it. It wasn't difficult. He paused, studying her face. You've done well for yourself. Partner at Horizon Marketing. Respected in the industry. I had motivation to succeed, Rachel replied. 2 small children depending solely on me. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. They wouldn't have had to depend solely on you if you had told me about them. Would that have been better for them? Rachel challenged. Growing up in your world with your expectations? Being molded into perfect little Brooks heirs. They're worth measured by how well they fit into your vision. You don't know what kind of father I would have been, Nathaniel countered, his voice low but intense. You made that decision based on who I was 8 years ago, in a relationship that had its own complications. Fatherhood might have changed me. Or it might not have, Rachel said quietly. I couldn't take that risk. Not with their lives, their sense of self-worth. They sat in tense silence for a moment, the weight of 8 years of separation and secrets hanging between them. Tell me about them, Nathaniel finally said, his voice softening slightly. What are they like? The simple request caught Rachel off guard. She had expected demands, legal threats, the full force of Nathaniel Brooks's considerable power brought to bear against her. Instead, he was asking to know his children. Tyler is thoughtful, analytical, she began hesitantly. He loves science and space, builds these incredible Lego structures without even looking at the instructions. He's quiet until he trusts you. Then he'll talk your ear off about black holes or dinosaurs or whatever he's currently obsessed with. A small smile touched Nathaniel's lips. And Chloe, fearless, determined. When she sets her mind to something, there's no stopping her. She's playing soccer now, insists on being striker even though she's one of the smallest kids on the team. She's also surprisingly artistic. Draws these detailed pictures that tell entire stories. They sound remarkable, Nathaniel said softly. They are. Rachel took a deep breath. They're also curious about you. Obviously, since they went behind my back to call you. I've tried to answer their questions without giving them too many details, but they're getting older, asking more. What have you told them about me? Rachel met his gaze directly. That you're a successful businessman who wasn't ready for a family. I've never spoken badly about you to them, if that's what you're asking. I didn't want them to carry that burden. Nathaniel nodded slowly, processing this. And now? What happens now, Rachel? Because I'm not walking away from them. Not now that I know they exist. The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Rachel had known from the moment she saw him on her doorstep that everything was about to change. But hearing him state it so plainly made it real in a way she hadn't fully grasped until this moment. I don't know, she admitted. I never planned for this day, even though I probably should have known it would come eventually. I want to be part of their lives, Nathaniel said firmly. I've missed 7 years, birthdays, first steps, first words. I won't miss any more. Rachel studied him, looking for signs of the controlling man she had left 8 years ago. His words were definitive, characteristic of his usual decisive manner, but there was something different in his tone, a vulnerability she had rarely heard from him before. They're not acquisitions, Nathaniel, she said carefully. You can't just decide you want them and expect everything to fall into place according to your plan. They're people, small, impressionable people who have never had a father in their lives. This has to be about what's best for them, not what you want or what I want. To her surprise, Nathaniel didn't bristle at her words. Instead, he nodded slowly. You're right. This isn't a business deal. I can't approach it that way. He paused, seeming to choose his next words with unusual care. What would you suggest as a first step? The question, so unlike the Nathaniel she had known, who never asked for suggestions but simply issued directives, caught Rachel off guard. I think we should introduce you gradually. Let them get to know you in small doses before they understand the full situation. They're only 7. This is a lot for them to process. And legally? Nathaniel asked, the businessman in him unable to completely set aside practical considerations. I'm not going to keep you from them, Rachel said firmly. If that's what you're asking, we can work out formal arrangements once we see how the initial meetings go. But Nathaniel, she leaned forward, her expression serious, I need to know that you're in this for them. Not for your ego, not for your legacy, not to prove a point to me or anyone else. Just for them as they are. Nathaniel held her gaze for a long moment. I want to know my children, Rachel. I want the chance to be their father. Not the man you feared I would be 8 years ago, but the man I am now, the man I can become with them in my life. There was a sincerity in his voice that Rachel hadn't expected. A humility that the Nathaniel Brooks she had known would never have shown. People can change in 8 years, she reminded herself. She certainly had. Okay, she said finally. We'll start today. Come back to the house for Christmas dinner. Meet them properly. We'll tell them you're an old friend for now, until we figure out the best way to explain the full truth. If you've ever had to navigate a difficult conversation that would change the course of your life and the lives of those you love most, give this video a thumbs up. Sometimes the hardest discussions are the ones most necessary for healing and growth. When Rachel and Nathaniel returned to the house on Willow Street, the twins were waiting impatiently, their curiosity barely contained. Rachel had texted her neighbor to bring them back, knowing this moment couldn't be postponed. Chloe, Tyler, she said carefully. This is Mr. Brooks. He's an old friend who wanted to visit us for Christmas. The twins exchanged knowing glances, clearly not buying this explanation. Are you really our dad? Chloe asked directly, her dark eyes, so like Nathaniel's, fixed on his face with unnerving intensity. Rachel shot Nathaniel a helpless look. So much for the gradual introduction plan. Nathaniel knelt down to the twins' eye level, a gesture that surprised Rachel. The Nathaniel she had known would have remained standing, maintaining the advantage of height and authority. Yes, he said simply. I am your father, and I'm very, very happy to finally meet you both. Why haven't you visited before? Tyler asked, his expression serious and assessing. Nathaniel glanced up at Rachel, then back to the twins. That's complicated. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and decisions that affect other people in ways they don't fully understand at the time. Did you know about us? Chloe pressed, never one to let a question go unanswered. No, Nathaniel replied honestly. I just found out yesterday, when you called me. The twins processed this information, exchanging another of their silent communications that Rachel had never fully been able to interpret. Do you want to see my telescope? Tyler asked suddenly. I just got it for Christmas. It can see Jupiter's moons. I'd like that very much, Nathaniel replied, a genuine smile transforming his usually serious face. And I can show you my soccer trophies, Chloe added, not to be outdone. I scored 12 goals this season. 12? That's impressive, Nathaniel said, his tone free of the condescension adults often used when speaking to children. Another surprise to Rachel, who had expected him to be awkward and formal with them. As the twins led Nathaniel on a tour of their prized possessions, Rachel watched from the doorway, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. There was guilt, certainly. Seeing the immediate connection forming between Nathaniel and the twins made her question her decision to keep them apart all these years. But there was also caution, born of intimate knowledge of the man Nathaniel had been and uncertainty about the man he had become. The Christmas dinner that followed was surreal. Nathaniel Brooks, billionaire CEO, sitting at her modest dining table, listening intently as the twins chattered about school and friends and their various interests. He asked thoughtful questions, showed genuine interest, and not once did he make a comment about the simplicity of the meal or the home compared to what he was accustomed to. After the twins were finally in bed, reluctantly, after extracting a promise from Nathaniel that he would return the next day, Rachel found him standing in her living room, looking at the framed photos that chronicled the twins' lives. I missed so much, he said quietly, not turning around. First steps, first words, first day of school. I'm sorry, Rachel said, and meant it. At the time, I truly believed I was doing what was best for them. Nathaniel turned to face her. And now I'm not sure, she admitted. Seeing them with you today, They connected with you so quickly, so naturally. Maybe I was wrong. Or maybe they connected with me because of the foundation you built. Nathaniel suggested, surprising her again. You've raised remarkable children, Rachel. Confident, curious, kind. That's not something I can take any credit for. The acknowledgement, so unlike the Nathaniel who had always claimed credit for every success, left Rachel momentarily speechless. What happens tomorrow? She finally asked. And the day after that? You have a company to run 3,000 miles away. The twins have school, friends, a life here. I don't know yet, Nathaniel admitted. Another phrase she had never heard from him during their relationship. But I do know I'm not going back to my old life as if nothing has changed. Finding out I have children. It changes everything. It does, Rachel agreed softly. It changed everything for me 8 years ago. They stood in silence for a moment, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over the room, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future hanging between them. I should go, Nathaniel said finally. I'm staying at the Mapleton Inn. I'll come back tomorrow if that's all right. Rachel nodded. The twins would be disappointed if you didn't. At the door, Nathaniel paused. Thank you, Rachel, for today, for raising them so well. He hesitated, seeming to search for the right words. For giving me a chance to know them now, even though you had every reason not to. As she watched him walk to the rental car parked at the curb, Rachel wondered if perhaps they had both changed more than either of them realized in the 8 years they had been apart. Over the next few days, a tentative routine began to form. Nathaniel would arrive mid-morning, spend the day with the twins, and leave after dinner. Rachel observed these interactions carefully, looking for signs of the controlling behavior that had defined their relationship, but found instead a man who seemed genuinely interested in discovering who his children were, rather than molding them into who he thought they should be. On the third day, while the twins were engrossed in building an elaborate snow fort in the backyard, Nathaniel approached Rachel in the kitchen where she was preparing hot chocolate. We need to talk about what happens next, he said, his tone serious but not demanding. I have to return to New York eventually. The company can't run itself indefinitely. Rachel nodded, having anticipated this conversation. I know. The twins have school starting again next week. This holiday bubble we've been in can't last. I want to be part of their lives, Rachel. Not just for holidays and special occasions. I want to be a real father to them. And what does that look like to you? Rachel asked, genuinely curious about his vision. Given that your life is in New York and theirs is here? Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the twins, who were arguing good-naturedly about the proper technique for packing snow. I've been thinking about that. I could open a West Coast office for Brooks Enterprises. We've been considering expansion in that direction for years. I could split my time between here and New York, at least initially. The suggestion caught Rachel off guard. In their relationship, Nathaniel had always expected her to adapt to his schedule, his plans, his life. The idea that he would restructure his business to accommodate the twins was so unexpected that she wasn't sure how to respond. You would do that? She finally asked. Upend your entire life? They're my children, Nathaniel said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. What about custody? Rachel asked, voicing the question that had been hovering unspoken between them. Legally speaking, I've consulted with my attorneys, Nathaniel admitted. They've outlined several options. Rachel tensed, preparing for the legal battle she had always feared would come if Nathaniel discovered the twins. And I told them I'm not interested in a contentious legal process that would put the twins in the middle of a custody fight, he said, surprising her yet again. I want us to work this out between ourselves, in whatever way is best for Chloe and Tyler. Rachel studied him, looking for the catch, the hidden agenda, the strategic move that would give him the upper hand. But his expression was open, his dark eyes, so like the twins, clear and direct. Why? She asked finally. The Nathaniel I knew would have had his legal team draw up papers before he even got on the plane to Mapleton. He would have used every resource at his disposal to get what he wanted. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. I'm not the same man you left 8 years ago, Rachel. That night, watching you walk away, knowing I couldn't control the outcome for once, it forced me to look at myself in ways I never had before. He turned back to the window, watching the twins play. I realized I had been treating relationships like business acquisitions, identifying what I wanted, developing a strategy to obtain it, and then maintaining control at all costs. It worked brilliantly in the boardroom but destroyed anything meaningful in my personal life. Rachel remained silent, allowing him to continue. After you left, I threw myself into work even more completely than before. Brooks Enterprises expanded exponentially. By every external measure, I was more successful than ever. He paused. And I was completely alone. No real friends, no meaningful relationships, nothing but the next deal, the next acquisition, the next victory that felt hollow almost as soon as it was achieved. So what changed? Rachel asked softly. About 3 years ago, I had a health scare. Nothing serious in the end, but it forced me to stop for a while to think about what I was really doing with my life. I started working with a therapist. He gave a small, self-deprecating smile. I resisted at first, of course. Nathaniel Brooks didn't need therapy. But eventually, I began to understand how my need for control was really about fear, fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough on my own merits. Rachel was stunned by this admission. The Nathaniel she had known would never have acknowledged weakness, let alone fear. I'm not saying I'm completely transformed, he continued. I still struggle with those tendencies, but I'm aware of them now. I catch myself, and I'm trying to be different, to listen more than I speak, to consider others' perspectives, to recognize that control is an illusion anyway. Before Rachel could respond, the back door burst open, and the twins tumbled in, cheeks flushed from the cold, demanding the hot chocolate she had promised. We built the best snow fort ever, Chloe announced, pulling off her mittens. Dad helped us with the structural integrity. The casual use of Dad, which had emerged naturally on the second day, still sent a jolt through Rachel each time she heard it. The twins had accepted Nathaniel with a readiness that both warmed and worried her heart. Hot chocolate coming right up, she said, pushing aside the weighty conversation for later. Go change into dry clothes first. As the twins thundered upstairs, Nathaniel turned to her. We'll finish this conversation later? Rachel nodded. Yes, we need to. If you've ever witnessed someone you once knew transform into someone you never expected them to become, hit that like button. People can change, sometimes in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about them. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Rachel and Nathaniel sat in the living room. The remnants of a board game the four of them had played still scattered on the coffee table. The easy camaraderie of the day had given way to a more serious atmosphere as they returned to their interrupted conversation. I've been thinking about your suggestion, Rachel began, about opening a West Coast office and splitting your time. And, Nathaniel prompted when she paused. And I think it could work as a starting point. The twins are clearly connecting with you, and I don't want to disrupt that. But Nathaniel, she leaned forward, her expression serious, I need you to understand something. If you're going to be in their lives, it has to be consistently. They can't be a project you focus on intensely for a while and then set aside when something more important comes along. They are the most important thing, Nathaniel said firmly. I know I haven't earned your trust yet, Rachel. I understand why you're cautious, but I'm committed to being their father. Not just when it's convenient, but always. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, then let's try this. You find a place here in Mapleton, establish the West Coast office, and we create a regular schedule for the twins to spend time with you. We start with day visits, then perhaps weekends, and see how it goes from there. That sounds reasonable, Nathaniel agreed. Another phrase she had rarely heard from him during their relationship. And legally? We can draw up a co-parenting agreement that outlines our arrangement without going through a contentious court process, Rachel suggested. Something flexible that can evolve as the situation does. I'd like that, Nathaniel said. Then, after a moment's hesitation, there's something else I need to ask you, Rachel. Something that's been bothering me since I found out about the twins. Rachel tensed slightly. What is it? Why did you keep my contact information all these years? You changed your number, moved across the country, built an entirely new life. Yet you still had my number in your phone. Why? The question caught her off guard. It was something she had never fully examined herself, a contradiction in her otherwise clean break from her past with Nathaniel. I'm not entirely sure, she admitted. Maybe part of me always knew this day might come, that the twins would eventually want to know you, and I would need a way to make that happen. Or maybe part of you wasn't ready to completely let go, Nathaniel suggested quietly. Rachel met his gaze, considering his words. Maybe, but not in the way you might think. I've never regretted leaving, Nathaniel. It was the right decision for me, and I believe it was the right decision for the twins too, given who we both were then. And now? He asked, his voice low. Given who we are now? The question hung between them, laden with implications neither of them was quite ready to address. Now we focus on being good parents to Chloe and Tyler, Rachel said finally. That's complicated enough without adding anything else to the equation. Nathaniel nodded, accepting her boundary. Fair enough. One step at a time. As January turned to February and February to March, the arrangement they had established began to take root. Nathaniel found a house not far from Rachel's, a modest place by his standards but comfortable and welcoming for the twins. Brooks Enterprises opened its West Coast headquarters in a nearby city, allowing Nathaniel to maintain his business while being present for his children. The twins flourished under the new arrangement, delighting in having their father in their lives while maintaining the security of their established routine with Rachel. They spent weekdays with her and alternate weekends with Nathaniel, a schedule that seemed to balance everyone's needs. Rachel watched this evolution with mixed emotions. There was relief, certainly, that Nathaniel had proven to be a more thoughtful father than she had feared. There was joy in seeing the twins so happy. But there was also a strange sense of displacement, as if the narrative she had constructed about her life and Nathaniel's role in it was being rewritten before her eyes. One evening in early spring, after dropping the twins off for their weekend with Nathaniel, Rachel found herself driving aimlessly, reluctant to return to her empty house. Without conscious decision, she found herself at the small park where she often brought the twins, now quiet in the gathering dusk. Sitting on a bench overlooking the playground, she tried to sort through the complicated emotions that had been building over the past months. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the figure approaching until he spoke. "Mind if I join you?" Nathaniel asked, his voice gentle in the quiet evening. Rachel looked up, startled. "Where are the twins?" "With my mother," Nathaniel replied, sitting beside her when she nodded her permission. "She flew in this morning for a visit. They're teaching her how to play some video game involving dancing." "Your mother is here?" Rachel was surprised. The elegant, formidable Margaret Brooks had always been a distant figure during their relationship, appearing only for the most important social occasions. "She wanted to meet her grandchildren," Nathaniel said simply. "Once she knew about them, wild horses couldn't have kept her away." "And how is that going?" Rachel asked, genuinely curious. "Surprisingly well. She's different with them than she ever was with me. Warmer, more playful. Maybe grandparenting suits her better than parenting did." He paused. "Or maybe she's changed too. We all have, it seems." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. "I saw you driving past the house," Nathaniel admitted. "You looked troubled. I wanted to make sure you were okay." The concern in his voice was genuine. Another change from the man who had once been so focused on his own agenda that he rarely noticed others' emotional states unless they directly affected him. "I'm fine," Rachel said automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, that's not entirely true. I've been thinking a lot lately about decisions and consequences, about the paths we choose and where they lead us." "Having regrets?" Nathaniel asked quietly. "Not regrets exactly, more like reassessments. Seeing you with the twins, the father you've become. It's made me question whether I was right to keep them from you all these years." "You made the best decision you could with the information you had at the time," Nathaniel said, surprising her with his understanding. Based on who I was then, your concerns weren't unfounded. But you've changed, Rachel acknowledged. More than I would have believed possible. People can when properly motivated. Nathaniel turned slightly to face her. Losing you was the wake-up call I needed, Rachel. And finding out about the twins. It's given me a purpose beyond just accumulating more success, more power, more control. Rachel studied him in the fading light, seeing both the man she had once loved and the new person he had become. I'm glad they have you in their lives now, she said softly. They needed a father, a good one. And I needed them, Nathaniel admitted. More than I ever knew. As they sat together in the gathering darkness, Rachel felt something shift between them. Not a return to what had been, but perhaps the beginning of something new. Something built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the love they both had for the two remarkable children who had brought them back into each other's lives. If you believe that people can truly change when given the right motivation and opportunity, share this video with someone who needs to hear that message today. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen when we least expect them, in ways we never could have imagined. The spring days lengthened into summer, bringing with it a new rhythm to their unconventional family arrangement. The twins moved easily between their two homes, carrying stories and experiences back and forth like little ambassadors. Rachel found herself increasingly comfortable with Nathaniel's presence in their lives, her initial wariness giving way to a cautious appreciation for the father he had become. What she hadn't anticipated was how often their paths would cross outside of scheduled handoffs and co-parenting discussions. It started innocuously enough, Nathaniel calling to ask about Tyler's science project deadline, or to check if Chloe had mentioned a soccer injury she'd been trying to hide. These necessary communications gradually evolved into longer conversations that drifted beyond parenting topics into shared memories, professional achievements, and eventually personal reflections. The twins mentioned you've been working late on a big campaign, Nathaniel said one evening when he called about an upcoming school event. The Westridge account? Rachel was surprised he remembered. Yes, actually. It's a major opportunity for the agency. If we land it, we'll be handling all their marketing for the next 3 years. You'll get it, Nathaniel said with a confidence that warmed her unexpectedly. Your presentation for the Meridian project was brilliant. Westridge would be foolish not to see your value. The compliment, delivered without the condescension that had often colored his praise during their relationship, caught her off guard. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you. I always recognized your talent, Rachel, he said quietly, even if I didn't always show it properly. These moments accumulated gradually, small acknowledgments of past mistakes, genuine interest in her life and work, respect for her boundaries and decisions. It was as if Nathaniel was carefully laying the groundwork for something, though Rachel wasn't sure what. The first gift arrived on a Tuesday morning in July, a simple arrangement of wildflowers delivered to her office with a note that read, "Saw these on my morning run and thought of you. They reminded me of that meadow in Vermont." And Rachel touched the delicate blooms, remembering the weekend trip early in their relationship when they had stumbled upon a hidden meadow bursting with wildflowers. It had been one of those perfect moments, lying in the grass, planning their future, before control and ambition had overshadowed connection. The flowers were followed by other thoughtful gestures. A book by an author she had mentioned enjoying, tickets to a local art exhibition for her and the twins, a bottle of the small batch honey she loved but could rarely find. None of the gifts were extravagant or showy. Instead, they demonstrated an attentiveness to her preferences and interests that the old Nathaniel had rarely displayed. "Dad's being weird," Chloe announced one Sunday evening as Rachel drove them home from Nathaniel's house. "He keeps asking us questions about you." Rachel glanced in the rearview mirror, catching her daughter's shrewd expression. "What kind of questions?" "Like what your favorite restaurants are now," Tyler chimed in from the back seat. "And if you still like those fancy dark chocolates with the sea salt. And if you're dating anyone," Chloe added with the bluntness of a 7-year-old. "Are you, Mom?" "No, I'm not dating anyone," Rachel replied carefully. "I've been focused on you two and my work." "Dad's not dating anyone either," Tyler offered. Grandma Margaret asked him about it when she thought we couldn't hear. He said there was only one woman he was interested in, but he had a lot of making up to do first. Rachel felt her cheeks warm, grateful that the twins couldn't see her face from the back seat. Well, grown-up relationships are complicated, she said, trying to sound casual. Now, who has homework to finish before bedtime? The conversation shifted, but Rachel's thoughts remained on Nathaniel's apparent interest. Was he truly trying to work his way back into her life romantically? And more importantly, how did she feel about that possibility? The answer wasn't as clear-cut as she might have expected. The Nathaniel she had left 8 years ago, controlling, dismissive, self-centered, was not someone she would ever consider reuniting with. But this new version, the man who listened more than he spoke, who put his children's needs above his own ambitions, who seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. This man was someone she found herself thinking about with increasing frequency. The invitation came on a Friday afternoon in late July. The twins mentioned you have a rare weekend to yourself while they're at science camp, Nathaniel said when she answered his call. I was wondering if you might join me for dinner tomorrow night. Rachel hesitated, aware that accepting would cross a line in their carefully maintained co-parenting relationship. Nathaniel, just dinner, he said quickly. No pressure, no expectations. I'd just like the chance to talk with you without little ears listening or work schedules interrupting. After a moment's consideration, Rachel agreed. All right, dinner sounds nice. I'll pick you up at 7, Nathaniel said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. When Saturday evening arrived, Rachel found herself spending more time than usual choosing her outfit, settling finally on a simple blue dress that she knew brought out her eyes. It was a realization that gave her pause. Was she really getting dressed up for a dinner with her ex? Nathaniel arrived precisely at 7, looking handsome but not overly formal in dark jeans and a crisp button-down shirt. You look beautiful, he said simply when she opened the door. Thank you, Rachel replied, feeling suddenly shy, as if this were a first date rather than dinner with a man she had once lived with. Where are we going? My place, actually, Nathaniel said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I thought I'd cook for you, unless you'd prefer a restaurant. The offer surprised her. During their relationship, Nathaniel had never cooked. They had either dined at exclusive restaurants or relied on his private chef. You cook now. A small smile played at his lips. I've learned a few things over the years. Nothing fancy, but edible. The twins seemed to approve, at least. Then I'd love to try your cooking, Rachel said, genuinely curious about this new skill. Nathaniel's home was warm and inviting, far from the sleek, impersonal penthouse they had once shared. There were signs of the twins everywhere, artwork on the refrigerator, a half-completed puzzle on the coffee table, family photos arranged on shelves. Felt like a home, not a showcase. Wine, Nathaniel offered, leading her to the kitchen where something that smelled delicious was simmering on the stove. Please, Rachel accepted, leaning against the counter as he poured 2 glasses. So what inspired you to learn to cook? Necessity initially, Nathaniel admitted, stirring what appeared to be a rich pasta sauce. After you left, I realized I didn't even know how to make a decent cup of coffee without someone doing it for me. It was humbling. I can imagine, Rachel said, trying to picture the commanding CEO fumbling with basic kitchen tasks. I started with simple things, eggs, pasta, basic proteins. Then when I knew about the twins, I wanted to be able to make proper meals for them, not just order in or hire someone else to do it. He glanced up at her. I wanted to be involved in every aspect of their lives, even the mundane parts, especially the mundane parts. The sincerity in his voice touched something in Rachel. This was perhaps the most profound change in Nathaniel. His willingness to engage with the everyday, unglamorous aspects of parenting and life. Dinner was surprisingly delicious. A perfectly cooked pasta with a rich tomato sauce, fresh salad, and warm bread. They talked easily throughout the meal, about the twins, their work, books they'd read recently. It felt comfortable in a way their interactions rarely had during their relationship, when conversations had often been dominated by Nathaniel's agenda or work concerns. This was wonderful, Rachel said honestly as they finished their meal. Thank you. There's something I want to show you, Nathaniel said, a hint of nervousness returning to his voice. If you're willing. Curious, Rachel followed him to what appeared to be his home office. Unlike the rest of the house, this room she hadn't seen during the brief tour earlier. When he opened the door, she gasped softly. One wall was covered with children's artwork, clearly pieces that Chloe and Tyler had created over the months since Nathaniel had entered their lives. But what caught her attention was the other wall, where dozens of photographs were arranged in a careful collage. Photos of the twins that she recognized from her own collection. Where did you get these? She asked, moving closer to examine images of the twins as babies, toddlers, preschoolers, all the years Nathaniel had missed. Your mother, he admitted. I reached out to her a few months ago, explained the situation. She was understandably cautious at first, but eventually agreed to share copies of photos from the years I missed. Rachel was stunned. Her mother had never mentioned this exchange. Why? Because I wanted to know them. All of them, not just who they are now, but who they were becoming all along. Nathaniel moved to stand beside her, his voice soft. I wanted to honor the years you spent raising them alone, to acknowledge that even though I wasn't there, those years matter to me too. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought unexpected tears to Rachel's eyes. This was so far from the man she had left, the man who had seen her primarily as an accessory to his success, who had dismissed her feelings and needs as secondary to his own. Nathaniel, she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. I'm not trying to rush anything, Rachel, he said quickly. I know we have a complicated history. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be easily forgotten or forgiven. But I want you to know that I'm not the same man you left 8 years ago. I'm beginning to see that, Rachel admitted softly. The twins are the greatest gift I never knew I needed, Nathaniel continued. But finding them again has also made me realize something else. Something I think I've known since the night you walked away. What's that? Rachel asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. That I never stopped loving you, Nathaniel said simply. Not the way I thought I loved you then, which was selfish and controlling, but the real kind of love, the kind that wants what's best for the other person, even if that means letting them go. The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable in a way the old Nathaniel would never have allowed himself to be. I'm not asking for anything right now, he continued when she remained silent. Just the chance to show you who I am now, to rebuild whatever trust one can. The rest is up to you. Rachel studied him, seeing both the man she had once loved and the new person he had become. I need time, she said finally. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need, Nathaniel replied. I'm not going anywhere. If you believe that true love sometimes deserves a second chance, especially when someone has done the hard work of genuine change, hit that like button. And if you want to see how Rachel navigates this unexpected turn in her journey, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The weeks that followed their dinner were filled with a delicate dance of cautious steps forward and thoughtful reflection. Nathaniel continued his gentle pursuit, not with grand gestures or lavish gifts, but with consistent presence and genuine interest. He called regularly, not just about the twins but to check on her day, to share something that had made him think of her, to offer support when she was stressed about work. When Rachel mentioned offhandedly that she missed having time to read, books began appearing on her porch, not with demands that she discuss them with him, but simply with notes saying he thought she might enjoy them when she found a moment. When she complained about a persistent headache during a phone call, he arrived an hour later with her favorite tea and offered to pick the twins up from their activities so she could rest. It was these small considerations, the evidence that he was truly listening to her and responding to her needs rather than imposing his will, that began to soften Rachel's carefully maintained boundaries. You seem different lately, her friend Melissa observed over lunch one day in late August. Happier, more relaxed. Rachel shrugged, trying to downplay the observation. The twins are doing well. Work is good. Things are just settled. Melissa replied skeptically. And it has nothing to do with the increasingly frequent mentions of Nathaniel in our conversations? We're co-parenting, Rachel defended, feeling her cheeks warm. Of course he comes up in conversation. Co-parenting doesn't usually involve that particular smile you get when his name comes up, Melissa pointed out. Or the fact that you've worn that dress he complimented 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Rachel sighed, knowing her friend had a point. It's complicated, Mel. We have history, not all of it good. People change, Melissa said simply. Sometimes for the better. The question is whether you're willing to risk finding out if his changes are real and lasting. The question lingered in Rachel's mind as summer transitioned to fall. The evidence of Nathaniel's transformation was undeniable. Not just in how he treated her, but in his dedication to the twins, his willingness to adapt his schedule to their needs, his genuine interest in their thoughts and feelings rather than just their achievements. The turning point came unexpectedly, during a conversation with Margaret Brooks. Nathaniel's mother had remained in Mapleton longer than originally planned, renting a small apartment nearby to spend time with her grandchildren. Rachel had been wary of the elegant older woman at first, remembering her as distant and judgmental during their previous acquaintance. But like her son, Margaret seemed to have undergone her own transformation. He was always such a serious child, Margaret remarked one afternoon as they watched the twins playing soccer in the park. So determined to prove himself, to exceed every expectation. That determination served him well in business, Rachel observed. Perhaps, Margaret agreed. But at what cost? I see him with Chloe and Tyler, how he listens to them, how he values their unique perspectives, how he encourages them to be themselves rather than what he thinks they should be, and I realize how differently I might have raised him. Rachel glanced at the older woman, surprised by the admission. You have regrets? Many, Margaret said frankly. His father and I were traditional in our approach. Children were to be seen and not heard, to follow the path laid out for them without question. We raised Nathaniel to believe that control was strength, that vulnerability was weakness, that success was measured in achievements rather than connections. She paused, watching her son laugh as he chased the twins across the field. When you left him, he was devastated, though he would never have admitted it to anyone. It forced him to question everything he thought he knew about himself, about what matters in life. He's different now, Rachel acknowledged softly. Because of you, Margaret said. And because of them. She nodded toward the twins. You gave him the 2 greatest gifts possible. The wake-up call he needed 8 years ago, and the children who have opened his heart in ways I never thought possible. The conversation stayed with Rachel long after they parted ways. That evening, after the twins were asleep, she found herself scrolling through recent photos on her phone. Images of Nathaniel with the children, of the 4 of them together at various outings and events. In every picture, his expression when looking at the twins was one of genuine wonder and love. And when he looked at her, there was something else there, something that made her heart beat a little faster. The next morning, Rachel made a decision. Instead of texting Nathaniel about the twins' upcoming school play as she had planned, she called him. Are you free for dinner tonight? She asked when he answered. Just the 2 of us. The twins are having a sleepover at Melissa's with her kids. I'd love that, Nathaniel replied, surprise and pleasure evident in his voice. My place again? Or would you prefer to go out? Actually, I thought I might cook for you this time, Rachel suggested. At my house. Around 7. I'll be there, he promised. Rachel spent the day in a state of nervous anticipation, preparing Nathaniel's favorite meal from their early days together. A dish she hadn't made in years. When he arrived, precisely at 7, she felt a flutter of butterflies that reminded her of their first dates, before complications and control had entered the picture. Something smells amazing, Nathaniel said as he followed her to the kitchen, handing her a bouquet of wildflowers similar to the ones he had sent months earlier. I hope you still like cocoa vin, Rachel replied, arranging the flowers in a vase. It used to be your favorite. You remembered, he said softly, the simple acknowledgement hanging between them with all its implications. Dinner was relaxed and comfortable, their conversation flowing easily between topics. Rachel found herself laughing more than she had in years, reminded of the chemistry and connection that had drawn them together initially, before everything else got in the way. As they finished their meal, Rachel gathered her courage for what she wanted to say. I've been thinking a lot about us, about the past, and about what might be possible now. Nathaniel set down his wine glass, giving her his full attention. I'm listening, he said quietly, his expression open but careful, as if afraid to hope for too much. When you came back into our lives, I was terrified, Rachel admitted. Not just that you might try to take the twins away, but that you might be the same person who made me feel so diminished, so voiceless. I understand that fear, Nathaniel said. I gave you every reason to feel that way. But you're not that person anymore, Rachel continued, meeting his gaze directly. I've watched you with the twins. I've seen how you listen to them, how you value their thoughts and feelings, how you put their needs above your own. And I've experienced how differently you treat me now, with respect, with consideration, with genuine interest in who I am rather than how I fit into your plans. She took a deep breath. Margaret and I had an interesting conversation the other day. She told me that losing me was the wake-up call you needed, and finding the twins was what opened your heart. She's right, Nathaniel acknowledged. Though I wouldn't say I found the twins. They found me, thanks to their determination to know their father. A small smile touched his lips. They're stubborn, like their mother, and strategic, like their father, Rachel countered with a smile of her own. The point is, Nathaniel, I've seen real change in you. Not just surface adjustments, but fundamental shifts in how you approach relationships, how you value connection over control. Hope flickered in Nathaniel's eyes. What are you saying, Rachel? I'm saying that I think we deserve a second chance, she said softly. Not to go back to what we were. That relationship wasn't healthy for either of us. But to build something new, something better, based on who we are now. Nathaniel reached across the table, his hand covering hers. I've hoped for this, he admitted. But I didn't want to pressure you. I know I have a lot to prove, a lot of trust to rebuild. We'll take it slowly, Rachel said, turning her hand to intertwine her fingers with his. One day at a time. But I think we might have something worth exploring. The smile that spread across Nathaniel's face was unlike any expression she had seen during their previous relationship. Open, vulnerable, genuinely joyful rather than triumphant. I would like nothing more, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And Rachel? This time, I promise to listen more than I speak, to value your voice as much as my own, to remember that love isn't about possession. It's about partnership. That's all I've ever wanted, Rachel replied softly. If you believe that true love sometimes deserves a second chance, especially when someone has done the hard work of genuine change, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people, but about imperfect people who learn, grow, and choose each other again with open eyes and wiser hearts. The months that followed were a careful, deliberate rebuilding of trust and connection. They dated properly this time, getting to know each other as the people they had become rather than the people they had been. Nathaniel continued to demonstrate his commitment not through grand gestures, but through consistent presence and genuine partnership. When Rachel faced a crisis at work, he offered support without taking over. When she expressed an opinion different from his, he listened with genuine interest rather than dismissing her perspective. When she needed space, he respected her boundaries without making her feel guilty for establishing them. The twins watched this evolution with the uncomplicated acceptance of children, delighted that their parents were spending more time together, but untroubled by the implications. To them, it seemed the natural progression of things, their family becoming whole in a way they had never experienced before. Are you going to marry Dad? Chloe asked bluntly one evening as Rachel tucked her into bed, nearly a year after Nathaniel had re-entered their lives. Rachel paused, caught off guard by the directness of the question. Would that be something you'd want? Duh, Chloe replied with 7-year-old certainty. Then we'd all be together all the time, and Dad wouldn't have to leave after dinner. It's more complicated than that, sweetie, Rachel began. Grown-ups always say that, Tyler chimed in from his bed across the room. But sometimes it's not complicated. Sometimes people just love each other and want to be together. Out of the mouths of babes, Rachel thought, smiling at her son's simple wisdom. We'll see what happens, she said, kissing each of them goodnight. For now, let's just enjoy the way things are. But the twins' question lingered in her mind as she went downstairs to where Nathaniel was waiting, having stayed to help with bedtime as he often did now. He looked up from his book as she entered the living room, his smile warming her in a way that had become wonderfully familiar. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. The twins were just asking if we're going to get married, Rachel said, deciding honesty was the best approach. Nathaniel set his book aside, his expression turning serious. And what did you tell them? That it's complicated, Rachel replied, sitting beside him on the couch. That we're enjoying things as they are. Is that how you feel? Nathaniel asked carefully. That you're content with things as they are? Rachel considered the question, aware that her answer mattered deeply. I'm happy, she said truthfully. Happier than I ever expected to be again, especially with you. But marriage, that's a big step, given our history. It is, Nathaniel agreed. And I would never rush you into anything you're not completely certain about. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. But I want you to know that I am certain, Rachel. About you, about us, about the family we could be together. He took her hand gently. I'm not formally proposing right now. I want that moment to be perfect when you're ready. But I do want you to know that's where my heart is. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that second chances can work, that people can change, that love can be better the second time around, when it's built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in his voice. I think I'm getting there, she admitted softly, to being ready for that step. I just need a little more time. We have all the time in the world, Nathaniel assured her, drawing her close. I'm not going anywhere. 3 months later on Christmas Eve, exactly 9 years after Rachel had walked out of Brooks Tower with a packed suitcase and no idea she was carrying twins, Nathaniel proposed. Not with a grand public gesture or elaborate production, but quietly, in the living room of the home they now shared, with Chloe and Tyler as willing conspirators who could barely contain their excitement. 9 years ago, I lost the most precious thing in my life because I didn't understand what truly mattered, Nathaniel said, kneeling before her with a simple but elegant ring. I've spent every day since you came back into my life trying to be worthy of a second chance. Rachel Thompson, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you what real partnership looks like? Through tears of joy, Rachel nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes. The twins erupted in cheers, rushing to embrace them both in a family hug that symbolized everything they had become. Not perfect, not without challenges, but whole and healing and filled with love that had been hard-won through growth and forgiveness. They were married the following spring in a simple ceremony in the meadow of wildflowers that had once represented their beginning and now marked their new start. As they exchanged vows surrounded by their children, family, and friends, Rachel reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been straightforward. But it had been real, a testament to the power of genuine change, of second chances earned rather than given, of love that was stronger for having been tested and found true. I never thought we'd be here again, she whispered to Nathaniel during their first dance as husband and wife. Standing together, building a future. The best journeys are the ones that surprise us, he replied, holding her close. Thank you for giving us, the chance to write a better ending to our story. But it wasn't an ending, Rachel knew. It was a beginning, one built on wisdom earned through pain, on growth forged through separation, on love deepened by forgiveness. And as she looked at their twins watching them with joy-filled faces, she knew that sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after what we think is the end. If you believe in the power of genuine change and hard-earned second chances, please like and share this video. And remember, my friends, that sometimes what looks like an ending is really just the beginning of a more beautiful story than we ever imagined possible. This is Mr. Harrison, wishing you love, growth, and the courage to recognize when someone has truly changed for the better. Until next time, keep believing in the transformative power of love.